Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining and submitting all your questions for this week. We love to see familiar attendees show up. I know we just wrapped up our Tuesday Talk series, so it's great to have all of you join. The first year of us hosting our exploratory program, Pathfinder. So thank you also for the feedback from last week's panel with Tuesday Talks. We're definitely going to review them and try to improve upon them for next year. Just going through some webinar etiquette, please mute your audio and you can feel free to turn on your camera. Like I said, it'd be great to have that interaction. But just know that we are recording the webinar. So if you aren't comfortable with that, you're more than welcome to obviously keep it off. And also feel free to use, a Zoom background if you'd like as well. In terms of Q&A, any urgent questions you might have, you don't really want to forget, you can drop them in the chat box. And the panelists, as well as the LEAP executive team, will try our best to answer them as they come in. Otherwise, please save your questions until the end, because we will have a Q&A. And we also have some internal team members taking notes, so I can always refer to them as well. But moving forward, next slide, please, me too. Our agenda for today, so we'll give a quick overview of LEAP and our program for this upcoming month, an intro to the business industry. We'll have our keynote speech by Jeff from TD, as well as Dave from the Toronto Hong Kong Lions Club, and then we'll wrap up with our university panel, and that will conclude the first day this week. Quick overview of LEAP. We're a nonprofit organization that's youth run, and we're really hoping to bridge the gap between high school and university. We offer lots of programs, initiatives, resources throughout the year. So I'm not going to talk too much about it, but feel free to check out our website and social media platforms for more. And in terms of Pathfinder, this is the first year we're hosting this event. Super excited. It's a month-long program with each week featuring a different industry. And the goal here is for students to be able to kind of explore and figure out, what are your interests, what career paths you might want to pursue in the future. So we'll have, panels, workshops, and also a deliverable project that you can work on throughout the week, and then live presentations at the very end. And obviously throughout the entire month, we have a lot of fun prizes for you to win. So please be sure to keep engaged. And you can learn more about it on our website, and also sign up for next week's program as well. All right, so now just doing a quick little intro on the business industry. First, we have accounting. So obviously, accounting is the measurement, processing, and communication of financial and non-financial information for businesses and corporations. So it's really about keeping track of, what the financial health of a company or of an organization. Lots of due diligence. You have auditing, making sure the numbers are right. So, very, very organized type of work. Some example post-secondary programs that are sort of perfect for if you want to pursue a career in accounting would be AFM, so accounting and financial management at Waterloo. Also at Western, we have BMOS accounting program, and then at McMaster, you also have the degree business. And so common companies that people would work for are the big four. So we have Deloitte, KPMG, EY, and PwC. Next, we have finance. So this is sort of also quite related to accounting, obviously, but it covers everything from money management to how funds are acquired. And it really requires, a basic understanding of the accounting fundamentals, but also, how a company or how an organization can raise and invest their capital. So common careers in this would be corporate finance, private equity, commercial banking, investment banking, and more. And just a quick note, I also wanted to mention that throughout the program, we'll be also having Brownie points giveaway. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. So throughout the week, words or like the slide deck will be bolded and in the font color red, as you can see on the slide. Please make note of these. And in the feedback form, you can list out all the keywords that are found, so all the red colored words. And so just keep an eye out for them, and the person who has collected the most keywords will actually win a special prize. So I'm kind of giving a plug here, a hint here. Pay attention to these words, jot them down, write it somewhere. But yeah, moving forward, these are some programs, and some companies are, banking institutions, like you have your big 5 Canadian banks, but also in the US, you have Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. And for corporate finance, kind of looking at managing the financials of a corporation or a large company, you can also have that as well as career. Next, we have consulting. So this is sort of the practice of providing advice to a specific group of people to either create change, or solve some sort of problem. And so essentially a consultant would have some sort of expertise in an area, and a company or an organization would be willing to pay the consultant some sort of fee to access their expertise and the research that they're doing. So again, there's quite a lot of universities and programs that cover this field, and a few companies that most people would commonly work for are Accenture, Deloitte, McKinsey, BCG, and Bain. So definitely companies you can check out. Next, we have operations. So this is more, I guess, a catch-all. It's really the role of, managing and trying to kind of figure out the inner workings of a business so it runs as efficiently as possible, as smoothly as possible. So it can be covering from like how we're selling the product to like the whole process flow to providing the service, overseeing a lot of these internal workings and processes of a business is kind of what it entails. So here we've listed some example programs. And as you can see, that the common theme here is a lot of business programs and universities in Canada do cover a good range of these different industries. But example companies, it really, for operations, you really have it everywhere. So from like Wealthsimple to RBI to SAP, pretty much every company would need some sort of like operational role to manage their processes. So definitely a very popular career choice as well. And then we have marketing. So I think Jeff can probably speak the best to this later on in his like Q&A, but marketing is really the activity of creating, communicating, and delivering content to clients, and really trying to promote the products and service offerings that your company has. And so with that, there's lots of different business programs, again, that you can take a look at. For example, Rotman Commerce, they have a special marketing program as well, Schulich. And again, with these companies, here are just a few that we've listed, but pretty much every single company has some sort of marketing component to it, and it's becoming even more prevalent as well. So yeah. And then lastly, we have entrepreneurship. So I don't really need to talk too much about this, but it's really the act of, starting your own business, taking, a problem or an idea that you have and bringing it to life. This one, there's lots of business programs that you can undertake, but most importantly, like, you're basically working for yourself, or maybe you're working with other people, your friends, to start your own business. So that's also a common path as well. And that pretty much wraps up our industry overview. Hopefully that gave you guys a bit of color on what the business field is like. And next slide, please. Let's meet our week 1 sponsor. So obviously the program cannot be run as successfully without our sponsors for this week. So we have TD as well as the Toronto Hong Kong Lions Club. I'm very, very generous of them to kind of provide their support for this week. And yeah, I'm going to let Nitu take it away from here.
All right, thank you so much, Caitlyn. So our first keynote speaker for today is Jeff Chan from TD. So Jeff, our first question for you is, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So basically, my job at TD, and you can look up my LinkedIn title, but it's the most ambiguous title in the world. My job basically at the end of the day is to predict what you want as a general consumer. And once I can predict that, I align them to trends, and we use those trends to impact how TD can transform for the future, whether it's our products, services, or our technologies. And I've been doing this job for about 5 years out of my 8 years at TD.
Awesome, thanks so much. Our next question is, can you tell us about the career changes that you've had?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do coming out of school. Actually, so my background is computer science, and it was in comp sci that I realized I didn't want to do comp sci because as a kid, I was very creative. I used to make a lot of movies. And coming out of school, I wanted to find a job that offered that balance between art and science. And for me, digital marketing fit that need. So my jobs included data analyst, digital marketing analyst, senior marketing advisor, product manager, senior marketing manager, strategic initiatives, which is just a fancy word for big projects, innovation, and now senior group manager for consumer trends. At the end of the day, all my jobs have one thing in common, and it was how do I use data to tell the story to inform where I go next for the customer.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is, what is your favorite part about your job and working at TD? And were there any memorable projects that you've worked on?
Yeah, so I never thought that I would be working at a bank, to be honest. My first job was at Dell, and then I ended up working at a startup for 2.5 years. It was a startup at the time. It was called Red Flag Deals. They're pretty big now. When I joined RFD, there were only 8 of us, and when I left, there were 40. And I joined the bank because I wanted to see if I could take everything I learned in e-commerce and in the startup world and apply it in banking. So what's kept me at the bank for 8 years now, and I can't believe it's been 8 years, has been the people I've gotten to work with. So TD Marketing is 900 people strong across Canada and the US. So I've worked with a lot of great people, and the TD Shield, the brand, is so strong that it has opened the doors for me to do a lot of projects and opportunities I never thought I'd get a chance to do. So in my role in innovation now, in the past 5 years, I have gone from running marketing campaigns, like the traditional marketing job, to I fly to San Fran 5 times a year. Of course, this was before pandemic, but I would fly to San Fran 4 or 5 times a year to meet with our tech partners like GAFA, the Big Five. Um, and my job was to look at their roadmaps and go, okay, Facebook, you're working on this in 2016. This is 2014. Cool. I would like TD to work with you on this thing that's about to launch because I want us to be first in market to demonstrate to our customers that we're always innovating for them. And then Facebook, they get a chance to stress test the capability before it goes out to public. So I've done a lot of cool projects with the Big Five. I've met a lot of great people I never thought I would. I mean, I met Larry and Sergey. I've met Mark Zuckerberg. It's been a lot of fun. And then I even got us into esports. Come on. Who would have thought that joining the bank 8 years ago, I'd have a chance to actually convince the bank that we need to be in the next space, which is esports, because I saw esports as the it's the sport for the next generation of sports fans, which is everyone here on this call today. So that's why we're the official bank of the Toronto Defiant, Vancouver Titans, and Toronto Ultra today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. That sounds like some really amazing work, and it sounds like you've got a lot of creative freedom with your job. So I think that takes us really well into our next question, which is, could you elaborate on some of the opportunities at TD for students to explore?
Yeah, lots of opportunities. I mean, we have summer internship programs for anyone joining a university. You have a chance to apply. Actually, no, you don't need to be a university student to join our internship programs, but we have summer internship programs, fall and spring internship programs. When you graduate school, we have undergrad opportunities where you could join associates programs where you are paid a full-time salary for 2 years and you rotate across 4 jobs every 6 months. At the end of your 2-year stint, you get a chance to explore 4 areas of the bank and you decide where you want to go next. And we have that opportunity for both undergrads and MBA grads.
Awesome, thank you. And that takes us to the end of our questions. So we're now going to open up the floor for some Q&A time for just about 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat now, and we can get right to it. And if you would also like to unmute, you're more than welcome to unmute and ask your question as well.
Who's going to break the ice?
Let's see.
Who's going to get 100 brownie points?
Ooh, that's a good question.
They had no idea we were going to give that out. But...
I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. It was really nice. My question would be, what made you switch from a startup to working at TD?
Insanity? No. So it was actually the way the bank positioned the job. Um, Joining at the startup, I was having a lot of fun. We were doing a lot of work really fast, but I was at a point in my career where I wanted to see if I could actually take this stuff that I learned and apply it in an organization that has 90,000 colleagues. And also, when you join a huge company like a TD or any huge company, you basically get your foot in the door in an organization where you could have access to 89,000 other jobs out there. The variety of jobs that a huge company can offer you, regardless of industry, is amazing. And that was a huge reason why I joined the bank and why I continued to stay. I mean, besides the career path stuff, the people really have been amazing, and they continue to be amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
your
that
answer.
question. I also see that Katie has her hand raised. Katie, would you like to go ahead?
So thank you, first of all, Mr. Chang, for answering the questions, and thank you, for Lee for organizing this panel. I think it's very interesting. My question for you would be, what could you tell us about networking and how you got the opportunities to work at the bank? And as you know, all the job you listed, like digital marketing and project manager, I was wondering, like with your computer science background, how were you able to, reach these positions that were like, I don't know, maybe not in your niche?
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie. And I did it through networking inside each company. So I had great lead. You can never do anything by yourself. Just so you know, everyone always needs help at some point. And I had great managers that encouraged me to have coffee chats with a lot of people once I got into that particular job, to meet with senior leaders. Don't be afraid of someone's title. The title doesn't mean they're going to bite you. They're there to talk to you. So, I always tell all my interns that when they join TD, for example, spend your summer having as many coffee chats as possible, because I need you to meet with as many people as possible. And then that way you can find out what opportunities exist outside of the job that you have. Because no matter what you're doing today, you're just basically trying to get ready for that next thing, and you won't know unless you kind of put yourself out there. And I will also say that you should always kind of keep your eyes open too. Don't assume that whatever plan you put together now is the plan you're going to stick with, unless you go to med school. Please finish med school if you go into med school. But outside of that, if you're going to do something, just assume that it might not work out, and just keep your eyes open. Lightning will strike anywhere. Just keep your eyes open.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. I also see that Alex has their hand up. Alex, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, Mr. Chan. Just a question about what's your opinion on the outlook of business jobs being automated? Because I've read quite a bit about auditing and bookkeeping jobs being slowly done away with.
Yeah, great question. And please, everyone on this Zoom call, please don't call me Mr. Chan, because it makes me feel 20 years older.
Sorry.
It's all right. But I'll say this: AI is not killing jobs. AI does not kill jobs. AI automates tasks within a job. So if your job has one task, okay, you might be in some trouble. If your job has multiple tasks, then the job of automation is to actually remove that off your plate so you can focus on more value-added opportunities. That's always been my position about AI. Now, when you talk about entry-level jobs, yes, entry-level jobs are at risk of being automated, but it's not just those data entry positions or those retail positions you see your friends have at the Gap. Believe it or not, automation impacts everyone, every job, even lawyers, programmers, all that stuff. It's all impacted. Now, I will say, just to wrap up this question, if you want to find a job that keeps you employable for the rest of your life, focus on your soft skills and focus on what makes you human. The most humanized jobs will be the ones that will take the AI the longest to automate all of its tasks. If you find a job whose tasks can be automated over time, then you might be in some trouble.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. I see Sean has their hand raised. Sean, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Jeff. Mostly Mr. Chan this time. But I was saying I drop in the chat box as well. But since communications has changed so much in the past 10 years, with like let's say the rise of TikTok, how have you changed your approach to marketing to reflect current trends?
Yeah, as a good marketer should always be looking at the emerging channels of choice for their clients, whatever segment they're focusing on. TikTok, of course, is one of them. Social audio is another. Another thing, me personally, that I'm starting to look at now is the metaverse, which is the eventuality that digital, all the big tech companies are starting to build out their version of the metaverse, and it's basically Ready Player One. If you've seen the movie Ready Player One, it's Ready Player One. So that's the next thing that we should be looking out for. I actually think by the time you guys are my age, the metaverse should be here.
That's crazy. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. I see one question in the chat before we get to Andrew. How did you use augmented reality to teach kids about compound interest?
That was actually it was a proof of concept actually from Microsoft with Microsoft. So we used HoloLens. So it's that helmet that uses mixed reality. So those of you who don't know, there's virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality. That's the spectrum from digital to less digital. Augmented reality is like Pokemon Go. It just puts digital information, kind of pastes it in the real world, but the digital information cannot interact with the physical space. Virtual reality puts you fully in a virtual space, like Ready Player One. Mixed reality with HoloLens uses digital information, puts it in the real world, but that digital information knows what's happening in the real world. So it knows if Pikachu is next to a door, it can put Pikachu behind the door. So what we did was using mixed reality, we built this concept where a kid could actually see a mountain grow over time as they are solving a problem. It was related with money, saving money. Instead of seeing a number grow like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it was blocks, cubes, just accumulating in front of them, and they could walk around and they could see this mountain growing in front of them. And the reason why we built it this way is because we landed on an insight that actually at the time when we were doing this, you guys are still kids. We said tweens and teens are highly spatialized learners. You likely will retain information more if it's in a 3D environment. I'm not saying virtual reality. I'm just saying you will probably learn faster if someone were to tell you or show you versus just seeing it on paper or trying it on a calculator. So we thought, cool, if you guys are spatial learners, then how do we bring 3D into something as simple as compound interest?
Awesome. Thank you. So Andrew will be our last question before we move on to our next keynote speaker, Dave. Andrew, go ahead.
Hey, Jeff, that's a really cool story, but I just more of a casual question, right? And it's not really, doesn't really have to do much with a lot of the more important subjects we're talking about here. But how is meeting Mark Zuckerberg like? What is he like as a person?
So I met him in 2016. So in 2015, TD was the first bank in the world to jump onto Facebook Messenger. That was my project, and he invited us down to F8 because TD was one of the first 20 brands on Messenger globally. And we were downstairs in the auditorium, and at the time Facebook was actually, they had a project where they were building solar powered drones, like drone planes, and the drone plane, it was part of the internet.org initiative. And I was just looking at the plane, and he shows up beside me and he says, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Oh crap, it's him." And then I said, "It's got a massive wingspan. He's a nice guy. He wasn't super personable 5 years ago." But there's one thing, and this is just my opinion. He was very jacked. Like he was pretty well built. I was really surprised. Yeah, and then Larry and Sergey at Google, they were very cool too. They had just came into one of the corporate cafeterias at Mountain View, and they were about to do an AMA with all of their employees. They're very transparent like that. And I said hi, and then I had to leave because I wasn't a Google employee. I couldn't hear all of the ask me anything questions that the employees were going to ask the two founders.
Yeah, thanks. That's great. You should have asked him what his fitness program was.
Well, thank you so
Well, I
much.
know he kicks on a lot of suntan when he goes surfing.
Oh yeah.
Or a lot of lotion when he goes suntanning, when he goes surfing.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for lending us your time. I definitely learned a lot from your speech, and we really appreciate it. So moving on, we will be heading into our next keynote speaker, Dave Kwan from Toronto Hong Kong Lions Club. I'll give him a minute to introduce himself, and then you can take it away.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Dave. I'm here to talk to you about your journey of transformation. And let me just briefly introduce myself. You probably read my profile already in the Pathfinder introduction before you join the program. I'm a trainer, and I'm particularly in a person who is consulting small to medium-sized business where they have a problem to solve, operation problems, training problems, financial problems. I've been working in the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare industry, engineering industry, and as well as energy industry for the last 20 years. I became an independent consultant 3 years ago, and I'm so happy that I have this opportunity to share some of my findings with you today. My message to you today is that the system that transforms you is transforming. Remember, this is your takeaway. The system that transforms you is transforming. And what do I mean by that is that in your secondary school environment and the post-secondary environment, there are two different things that you have to deal with, and it's really a transformation for you. The secondary education environment, you make friends, you develop relationships with your friends, you become good friends when you go into university. People have a lot of commonality in their bonding. Give you an example. One person buy a Nike pair of shoes, everybody has a Nike pair of shoes. They develop that commonality. Similar people hang out in groups, study groups, maybe sports group. It's kind of loosely organized. Some people, the girls like to do shopping trips or shoppings or that kind of groups as well. So you are easily influenced by your teacher and other people around you. That is the secondary environment. In your post-secondary environment, things start transforming. And you make friends, not only make friends, you make connections. You make a connection on a professional basis. You do not develop only relationship, you develop rapport. Now, the word rapport, I like to emphasize that if you're Chinese, there's no translation to that. Rapport leads to trust. Relationship is only a byproduct of that process. So you develop that rapport to influence people. You develop yourself as an individual, not as a commonality with other people, because you're so unique by yourself. I got a funny story to tell that there are three guys studying at the University of Waterloo IT engineering program. They're three good friends. They went through the same program. Overnight, they find themselves being competitive because they applied to the same job. So the one guy got the job is so unique that why he got hired is because he is so unique within that three people. You got to focus on teamwork, not just groups. Teamwork implies accountability. Teamwork implies leadership. Teamwork implies specific objective you have to achieve. You start influencing others rather than influenced by others. So this is really a picture of transformation you're engaging. And let me take you to a kind of historical path of education in my generation, is that you develop your fundamental knowledge within your secondary education and undergraduate environment. Your technical knowledge kind of started in your second year of undergraduate and take you to your early career. And then when you enter your career, you start developing your transferable skills. There's a red bar. Now that was the historical path. The current path has actually pushed down a little bit, and you see the fundamental knowledge remains to be more or less the same. The technical knowledge starts pretty early. Even in secondary school, people into this programming about technical things, about IT, about other things, you start that to develop technical knowledge very early. And the transferable skill actually people develop within that undergraduate environment. I'll define the transferable skill in a few more minutes. What I've done some research over the last little while is to project into the future, looking at the future path of education. The future path of education is that your fundamental knowledge pretty well, in the same area. The technical knowledge, yes, you develop early in your secondary education, and your transferable skills actually push into your secondary education as well. So I echo with Jeff, just make the point that you have to have your transferable skill very early in life to ensure that you have career success. I for one, is an example of how transferable skill benefit me from transforming from one industry, which is the healthcare industry, into engineering, energy industry, which is nothing has to be related together. So I'll use all my transferable skill to help me to get that job, transform my career, and become a global director in an engineering company. So you might ask me, what are the top transferable skills in demand? Recently, I did some research to look at Indeed.ca, all the entry-level jobs. We screen about 50 jobs. Those are IT, those are engineering, human resources, finance, office administration. It's all entry-level jobs with post-secondary education, university graduates. We find that these are the top 5 that is needed in every single job description. Communication, written and verbal communication. These are essential. Interpersonal, teamwork, problem solving, and communication. To some of you, this might not be a surprise, but I want to take it one step further for you. Is in the post-secondary environment, your communication becomes strategic communication. How you use that communication wisely to talk to, Jeff just talked about the CEOs, the C-level suite. How do you communicate to those people? Communication is not just using your phone to text people. Communication is how you use your body language, tone, and words to convince, to persuade people. Interpersonal skill becomes interpersonal effectiveness. How do you use a relationship, a rapport, to enhance that influencing? Teamwork becomes dynamic teamwork, which create energy, synergism, and enthusiasm in motivating other people to work together. Problem solving becomes creative problem solving. Some people say it's critical thinking. It's nothing related to a technical aspect, but how you use your questioning skills to solve problems. I read a quote just recently, is that clever people has good knowledge to solve problem, but intelligent people ask the right question to solve problem. An organization becomes a pattern-based organization. In the future, if you look into the future, the really essential thing is how you can quickly identify a pattern in a problem so that you can use that pattern and create a solution, an organization to solve that problem. So in other words, these are the things that is transforming, and you are in the process of transforming you as well. I have 3 key takeaways for you that you might consider. It's all start with A. Number 1, you need your autonomy to start your journey. In your transformation journey, you need to start it yourself. You don't wait for another person to tell you. You don't wait for your family member, your professor, your high school teacher, or somebody you have to start for yourself. You have the autonomy to start the journey. The second thing is to acquire this transferable skill early. Learn it early in life. If you do it in grade 11, grade 10, you have to start somewhere early and acquire that in the early stage of your education. The last thing is agility in learning. You learn something today, you're able to apply it tomorrow. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can read books, you can watch videos, you can take courses, you can acquire a mentor early in life to have you go through these things. So the 3 A's: autonomy to start your journey, acquire a transferable skill early, and an agility in learning. You learn something today, you can apply it tomorrow. I would like to open up for a few questions if you have any. It's my pleasure to join you. It's a humbling experience to see this lead group taking on the challenge and benefiting others.
Thank you so much, Dave, for that wonderful presentation. I definitely learned a lot. And yeah, like Dave said, we're opening up the floor for a few questions. Just like last time, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and unmute, or you can also put them in the chat. I see Alex has their hand raised. Alex, go ahead.
Alex.
Hi, Dave. If I can call you Dave, or would you prefer? What would you personally say is the what would you personally say is the most important skill a business person could possess?
What, can you repeat it? I have some echo on my speaker.
What would you personally say is the most important skill that a successful business person could possess, aside from?
Yeah, the 5 things that I presented are all essentials, but if I have to pick something that happened in the future, interpersonal remains to be number 1. Because if all these jobs are being automated in the future, what remains for human is how you deal with another human being, is how you treat others, all the way up to the CEO level, all down to the janitor who takes care of the office. So interpersonal is number 1. Number 2 is that the problem solving. I call it critical thinking. Is how you take all the information that you know and critically think through it to provide a solution for the problem. So these are the 2 essentials that you need to start early and move forward with.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. I see Katie has her hand up.
Hi, so thank you very much, Mr. Kwan, for this presentation. It was pretty interesting. Thank you.
Just call me Dave.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Katie.
Thank you. Okay. Hi. So my question would be, as you would, I would consider you a veteran. So what do you think would be the biggest challenge for like the young people who want to get into consulting, like right now?
Okay. There's numerous ways. I think that, going to school is absolutely the most important thing. And Caitlyn just mentioned that there's a consulting, the whole consulting business you can go into. But you want to start fresh as a consultant. Number 1, you need to have your credibility. Okay. Aristotle always convinced people 2,000 years ago. It hasn't changed since then. You need to have your credibility, you have your education. And through education with doing summer internship programs, some people have other cohorts doing, working in the real business world, you accumulate that experience. So credibility is important. I think the second thing you need to have is your passion, is how you tell a story, how you narrate yourself, how you sell yourself, in other words, how you create that passion in life that helping other people. It's not, in the end of the day, it's not the money you make. At the end of the day is that how engaged you are with another person to help them to solve the problems. Money is only a byproduct of that.
Thank you so much.
I see one more question in the chat. Let's see. What industries do you think, oops, sorry, just lost it. What industries do you think will strongly develop in the future?
That's a great question. I think that with all the IT technology that, of course, the IT industry is going to be developed further and further. They will be blowing, over the top. Of course, that's the trend. But I think there is another thing is that with an aging group of population, how you work with experienced people and learn from that. I think the learning industry is there's an incredible amount of talent out there who are people who are the baby boomers. Finish them all and put it back. That's the worst thing ever. I'm sorry? Okay. So there's a huge amount of people who are retiring, and the learning industry is actually very booming over the last 18 months during the pandemic. If you look at LinkedIn, many organizations are transforming the company. So they hire learning directors, learning, training, and development managers. I'm consulted with a few companies right now that is on the same basis because they do not know what would be the outcome after the pandemic. So for nearsightedness, if you will, that for the next 24 months, there is a boom of helping people to learn, transforming companies that is ready to kick into the future.
Awesome, thank you. We've got one more question in the chat. With the acceleration in learning technical skills and transferable skills, are there any specific programs or learning opportunities you would recommend for current youth?
Well, the organization I'm consulting with, this is One Hub is my organization. We do offer people a program called CRITQ, C-R-I-T-Q, is critical thinking, critical reasoning, and interpersonal transformation. Q is quotient. So we're trying to develop a quotient. It's like IQ, it's like EQ, your quotient of critical thinking. So you see my email on the screen. So if you are interested in that, please let me know. We can always confer over email.
Awesome, thank you for that. Another question, how does one learn problem solving or develop critical thinking?
Well, there is a systematic way of learning critical thinking. I think that firstly is not to learn to win an argument. No, it's not about an argument. It's about connecting with people. I think systematically there are many ways of learning how to connect with people by observing people behavior, learning about the body language, face-to-face communication. And once you connected that, you can start using your questioning skills to influence people. And that is the second part. It's always like riding a bike. The first part is your front wheel. Your front wheel is your interpersonal effectiveness, and your back wheel is your knowledge of asking the right question, influencing. That's critical thinking. So the two things has to be coordinated. Otherwise, your bike is going nowhere without a steering in the front wheel. You're only spinning your back wheels.
Thank you so much, Dave. And our last question before we move into our next part of our panel is, what should we do to improve our transferable skills effectively?
Well, I think that there are many ways, as I say, read books, watch videos. There are many videos on YouTube. Get a mentor. This is what I've been doing. I donate my time, mentoring other people. I've been coaching some of the people here as well. Caitlyn has been in the Leo's Club before she moved to university. So get a mentor and have that mentor identify with you what are your developmental gaps early in life. So give me a call if you need to find things that to learn, and we can engage, and you have my email on the screen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dave, for letting us know of all of those opportunities. And we would also like to say a really big thank you for donating your time to us and being a keynote speaker for us today. We really appreciate all of the insight that you provided.
It's a humbling experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so we will head into our university panel now. Let me just share my screen. All right, so getting started, let's start by introducing our university student panelists for today, starting with Maggie. Maggie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Nitu, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. It's really nice to see all of you here, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. So my name is Maggie. I am the founder and CEO of Leap Canada, and it is a pleasure to be here with everyone today. I am currently a summer intern within the supply chain and network operations consulting practice at Deloitte. I'm also a product and operations manager at Zakuri, which is a real estate and technology startup. And like I introduced myself earlier, I am the founder and CEO of Leap Canada, and I'm also the founder and board of directors on another charity nonprofit that I run on the side. And that's a bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Maggie. Next, we have Caitlyn.
Hi, everyone. Hi again. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the keynotes and enjoying the program so far. I'm Caitlyn. I'm also one of the founders and also the CFO of Leap Canada. Currently, I'm a sales and trading summer analyst at Scotiabank, and I'll be going into investment banking at Evercore, part of the tech team next summer. I'm also an associate for this upcoming year's club, my Ivy Private Capital Club at Western. And in my free time, I also do a bit of emceeing on the side for nonprofits and other organizations.
Thank you, Caitlyn. And last we have Annie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annie. I am a current intern at RBC Wealth Management. I'm a tax intern there. Before I used to be co-VP events and now an advisor for Western's Marketing Association. And I created a publication on the side last summer. In my free time, I love to craft, I love to sew, I love to make cards. So if you are creative, hit me up.
Thank you guys so much. All right, so we'll move into what our panel discussion will look like. We've broken it up into two parts. First, we've got academic requirements and courses, and then we'll finish up by talking about experiences, internships, clubs, and extracurriculars. So our first question is, what do you study and why did you choose this program? Maggie, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So I am going into the HBA, which is the Honors Business Administration at Ivy Business School at Western University. And so the reason why I chose to go to Ivy is just because I feel like there's a lot of exposure to a lot of different opportunities, from finance to consulting to marketing to accounting, any type of business related work you can think of. I think Ivy definitely gives you a great network of people that you can reach out to. And I think Caitlyn and Annie can kind of elaborate on why they also chose Ivy.
Thank you, Caitlyn.
Yeah, so similar, also going into HBA at Ivy this coming September, but I chose Ivy because of the alumni network. There's just a lot of alumni, Ivy alums from, going into different fields around the world, joining different companies, and speaking from firsthand experience in terms of like recruiting for my past few internships. I think I can really speaks to how helpful it was just to have that network across different companies and be able to kind of learn more about the different jobs out there. And the second point would just be the strong sense of mentorship. I think at Ivy, like everyone's super willing to, chat with you and kind of give back to the community. So that's been really helpful just to navigate throughout my interests and career choices.
Awesome, thank you. Annie.
Yeah, I definitely echo everything that Maggie and Caitlyn said. On a more, I guess my thought process at the time was I didn't get into Queen's Commerce and I wanted to do business. So the option that I had was Ivy, and luckily I got into that. So it was a bit more of a practical reason of why I got in, but definitely I second everything that Maggie and Caitlyn said about the program.
Awesome, thank you all so much. Our next question is, what does the student experience look like applying to your program? Maggie, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. So in high school, I was an IB student. And so naturally there was something called CAS, which means you have to kind of do other stuff in addition to your academics. So I think starting very, very early at the end of grade 11 or starting in grade 12, I started thinking about all of the activities or all of the involvements that I had throughout high school. And I really wanted to highlight a couple of specific incidences or situations that could really showcase my leadership. And so these are really important, is to, as soon as you're starting grade 12 or at the end of grade 11, start thinking about which extracurricular activities you do want to highlight, and start thinking about if there's any specific scenarios that you want to talk about, because they will ask you to write like a 500-word essay. Start editing them in early January and submit shortly after that, and just make sure you start super, super early because you will get super busy. That's my tip.
Thanks, Maggie. Caitlyn.
Yeah, I think so we all apply to the same program, but I would just say, like, when you're doing your research in grade 11 or grade 12 in terms of like what post-secondary educational institution you want to go into, just be mindful of the requirements in terms of like the courses you need to take, any prerequisites, the grades you need, maybe like what kind of ECs they're looking for, and try to plan ahead. I think that's sort of the biggest tip is planning early and planning ahead so you're not scrambling last minute would really relieve some of the stress going on. And just be really reflective as well. I think it's really easy to just follow the herd and do what everyone else is doing. You know, you hear a lot of buzz around people saying about this business program or this university or whatnot. So just be really reflective of like, if this is something you're really interested in, if it'll give you the opportunities you're kind of looking for. And to do that, you know, try to talk to as many people as possible.
Thanks, Caitlyn. Annie.
Yeah, I will say more from my experience. I got this one good advice, which I think is pretty relevant. There's kind of a formula to writing the essays, and it doesn't have to be a Nobel literate like story that you have to pan out. And they are looking for key qualities that are listed on the website. So really showcasing that even if you don't have an example like a leadership or captain role in whatever club you did, they're looking for the impact that you made. And I believe those qualities are somewhere along the lines of collaboration, initiative, like leadership, something like that. You can find those on their website. And so focusing in on like how you demonstrated that, you don't need to spend, I think, like tons and tons and tons of time like refining it and making it to like a beautiful story. It's more about focusing on the impact that you did. That is my spiel.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. What does your typical day in your life look like as a student? Maggie.
Sure. Okay. So in a pre-COVID world, and hopefully we'll get back to that this September, for post-COVID, in person, usually we do try to have our classes earlier in the morning. So say like 9 or 10 a.m. and then you have a couple of classes in a row. Maybe you have like a 1-hour lunch break and then you end around 2 or 3 p.m. And then you start studying at the library, you know, if you're a good studious student. And then the clubs usually start in the evenings at around 5 or 6 p.m. You grab dinner with your friends, and then after that you continue to study because you're a good student until you go to sleep. And then on the weekends, obviously you take some time off to chill, hang out with friends and things like that. In a virtual environment, so in this past year, obviously things, you know, as you would suspect, look a little bit different. So what I found personally was that I had a lot more freedom and flexibility to really plan out my day and really fit meetings as they see, you know, as they're like appropriate. So for me, I like to have my meetings earlier in the morning and then start studying later in the afternoon.
Thanks, Maggie. Caitlyn.
Yeah, the reason why I didn't really put anything here is because I think I have a pretty similar schedule to like Maggie and Annie. So I'm just gonna let Annie take it away from here.
Awesome. Annie.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm as studious as Maggie because I definitely did not have as a structured or rigorous schedule as she did. I kind of woke up, I set my schedule, I had a technique in first year. I set my classes in the morning and it was an important one, so I actually had to go. So I would get up and my day would start. And then afterwards, I mean, you know your study schedule the best, so I kind of knew how much time I needed to be prepared for any exam or any assignment coming up. I would plan it that way, and I didn't really have a fixed routine. I would like get up whenever I had my morning classes, and then I would study in the middle of the day just because nothing much else is going on, and I would do like my club activities or any kind of personal work during that time as well. In the evening, yeah, it would be dinner and then studying if I felt like I needed to. And if I didn't need to study, then I would just go to my friend's room and we would chill. And that's part of the first year experience as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, moving into experiences. What are some ECs that you took part in that helped you land your current role? Maggie.
Okay, so at Western, there is a pre-business, so it's like a pre-Ivy business club, and it's the largest on campus. It's called PBSN, which stands for Pre-Business Students Network. So in this club, I actually started as a director, and I moved on to a VP role in my second year. And for this experience, I really highlighted my relationship management experience. And I think that's one of the personable or transferable skills that you really do need in the business industry, like Jeff and like Dave mentioned earlier. Being able to build relationships with people is really really, really important. And I think that was part of the reason why I was able to get my current role. I think also as the founder of a couple of nonprofits, that also does highlight my strategy and leadership experience, which especially in consulting is what people look for. And then lastly, I think just for school clubs in general, being a consultant for a couple of different clubs, it really does highlight my collaboration, my strategy, my conflict management and communication skills, which are all really, really important. So I guess just one extra tip, as you are applying for different internships, just make sure that you actually say like, oh, you know, on your resume, I developed like relationship management, or I have like specifically conflict management or communication skills, because I think sometimes the screeners will actually pick up on that. And it's really easy for the interviewer to actually go through your resume and see that you have those skills as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. Caitlyn.
Yeah, so I think with like finance, I wasn't even sure what finance was like before going to university. And so going from like no experience to being part of like different finance clubs at school and doing my summer internship, I think joining finance clubs at your respective university is really important, just so you can not only, you know, learn more about the industry, about the career prospects, but also just gain some sort of like practical experience. Usually a lot of clubs would have like deliverables or projects you can work on to kind of sharpen those. For example, in finance, you would have like technical skills you need to work on. So for me, it was like Ivy Private Capital Club. Not only did it show my interest in finance, help me gain some of the skills prior to going, you know, doing an actual job, but also just learning how to navigate like through all the nuances, I think. And another aspect I think really was important was like emceeing. So, or just in a broader sense, like doing community work. Because I think that really highlights like my communication skills, how my team orientedness. I think that's also really important. A lot of jobs also look for like teamwork and collaboration as a critical skill you should have, and also professionalism. So I think with all of those, you know, experiences, that kind of helped me land my internship.
Thanks, Caitlyn. Annie.
Yeah, there are a few pieces that helped me land my internship. I would say the one on the slide, Western Marketing Association, was definitely key because it allowed me to experience so many like challenging situations. Same goes with MCAP, my customer service role. One thing I wanted to highlight, first of all, I echo everything Caitlyn and Maggie said, but I think something different I also want to emphasize is don't forget about your passion clubs or just things that you're really interested in, and they don't have to be business related and they don't have to be a leadership role. Like in first year, for example, I joined a musical and I've never done a musical before, but I just wanted to be in a musical, so I joined one. And I wasn't a captain. I had one line in the show and I was a general team member, and I never thought I would use that in a situation, like ever. But what I would say is if you are someone who regularly takes initiative, if you are someone who's regularly like reaching out to other people, seeing how you can help. If you see 5 people in the corner scrambling to get something done, are you someone who's going to offer your help to them when you are not particularly busy? You can make an impact no matter what role you're in or no matter what club you're in. And so at that point, like I was an ensemble member, I had one line in the show, and yet I like paid attention to everything that was going on. I memorized my one line, I memorized my blocking, I memorized my choreography. And at one point, the director even called on me to help other people clarify choreography. So small instances where you're responsible for yourself, where you're taking initiative for yourself, can be applied in any role. And I would strongly recommend not forgetting your genuine interests beyond what your career paths are. But yeah, that's my take.
Thanks, Annie. Our next question is, what are some useful skills you learned that help you be successful at your current position? Maggie.
Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned earlier, relationship management is something that is really, really important. I think like Jeff mentioned earlier, being able to network with different people, I think it really allows you to learn more about what other people are doing, and it really helps you learn more about whether something is for you. So I think for me right now, what I've been trying to do is trying to connect with more people within the firm, just to see if there are other opportunities that might be more suitable for me, or to get some feedback and to improve improve upon what I'm currently doing, and to really build that network that will last you a lifetime is really, really, really useful. So I would say that whether you're just entering university, whether you're going into your first internship, like don't hesitate to just reach out to anyone, to just, you know, strike up a conversation and ask them how their day's been going. People are always beyond what their title is. Like just because they're like a senior manager, or just because they're like a partner at a firm, like doesn't mean that they're not human. So don't be afraid of their title. Just treat them as like, you know, the dad of your friend. And I think that's the easiest way to kind of navigate those relationships.
Thanks, Maggie. Caitlyn.
Yeah, I think another important skill is just like cultivating a sense of professionalism. I think a lot of you guys have showcased that today. The entire Leap team was just saying how impressed we are for like all of you guys just, you know, unmuting yourself, asking questions, establishing that tone, that formality. And so I think a big part of, especially in the corporate world at least, is like there are certain formalities or expectations that come with the job. And so trying to navigate that while, you know, standing out and leaving a good impression on your team is something that I think is super important. And I think establishing that like professional image while showcasing your individuality is also pretty important. So I think that's something that just kind of comes with experience and as you go through the process. But just keeping that in mind, you know, you do want to leave the best impression or like a good impression on people that you work for or that you work with. And so, yeah, that's just something to keep in mind.
Thanks, Caitlyn. Annie.
Yeah, mine is communication in a broader sense. And I'm sure everyone here knows what effective communication looks like. But the one I want to stress about is networking, and coffee chats is just an example. And there's two major pieces of advice that I got in, like, as I was going through university that helped me significantly. One of them I kind of learned myself. It was treat networking as a learning opportunity and not a gateway to getting a job. And I learned that, like, when I first started networking, I was like, I don't know what the objective is. I don't know, like, is this going to be awkward? I have no idea what to do. And yeah, the first few coffee chats were really awkward. But the second piece of advice I would say is networking is more of an art than a science. And so just because someone else has something that really, really works for them, or questions that really, really works for them, does not mean that that same thing is going to apply to you. I've had so many conversations with different friends and just about the different ways we like to tackle learning about other opportunities, learning about what fits and what doesn't fit for us. So take everyone's personal anecdotes with a grain of salt, try them. Don't beat yourself up at the beginning, especially if you're learning how to network and if you're learning how to communicate with professionals and learn about it. Treat it as a learning opportunity. Every conversation has something of value. And through practice, you'll find your own style of communicating.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. All right, so our last question before we move into our Q&A is, do you have any tips or tricks for students looking to get more involved in your field? Maggie.
Yes. So I think I can speak specifically to consulting. So in consulting, it is, you know, you always start off as a generalist. So you don't really specialize in a specific like industry or like a specific type of field. But what I would say is that because consulting is so broad, it would be really important to make sure that you are trying to learn as much as you can about the types of consulting that are available. So for example, I'm currently in supply chain, but I think after the summer, I might want to switch into customer strategy or customer innovation, because I like to be facing the customer more, or I like to care a little bit more about what the customer journey looks like. So just make sure that, you know, you are constantly looking out for other opportunities to learn more about different industries and different types of work, because if you're a consultant in, for example, supply chain versus being a consultant on like financial services, like your roles and the type of work that you're doing is going to be completely different. So it's really, really important to figure out what you really like working on and where you want to be. So that's what I would say if you want to get into consulting.
Thanks, Maggie. Caitlyn.
Yeah, so I would say for finance, as I kind of briefed in the industry overview, there's just a ton of different like paths within finance. Obviously you hear about like the popular ones like private equity or investment banking or even corporate commercial banking, but there's really a lot of other areas for you to discover. And honestly, like one of my regrets is not really you know, kind of navigating through that and trying to and exploring that when I was in high school or university, or like in the very beginning. So I would say just try to chat with as many people as possible, to really explore and figure out, you know, if finance is something we want to do, like what you want, what exactly, or what area of finance you want to do, and not just like go with the herd type of beat. And I think when you figure that out, it would give you a much more direction in terms of like for your future planning, and also help you figure out your why, and it'll like your choice would be a lot more longer lasting, and you'll have that motivation to continue to pursue it regardless of like the difficulties. So yeah.
Thanks, Caitlin. And Annie.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in the last question. Networking is so important, and I used to hate this word. I used to hate hearing networking because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm using other people to get opportunities for myself. But if you think about it, the people before us, they also got advice and learned about opportunities from their seniors, and chances are they want to pass it on. They want to pay it forward to us as well. And once you guys and us, when we are in our respective professions and wanting to pay it forward, we will do the same thing. So everyone's kind of in this together. Especially in university and in high school, when you have the time to figure things out, not saying that you won't have it in the future, but you have more time and there's a lot less risk involved figuring out now. Try and learn as many different things as possible, get to talk to people from as many different fields as possible, figure out what you're interested in. And yeah, I also really second Maggie's point about narrowing down teams. If you want to do consulting, that from a broader sense, do your research with whatever you go into, any coffee chat, any position, do your research. And yeah, just don't be afraid to learn.
Thanks, Annie. All right. So we'll take a few minutes just to go into our Q&A. We are running a little bit over time, so we'll just take just a few questions. Like before, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and unmute to ask your question, or you can put them in the chat as well. Katie, I see your hand up. I'm not sure if that was from the previous Q&A session. I think it might have been. Don't be afraid to put any questions in the chat. Here we go. What type of extracurriculars would be ideal to highlight when applying to the Ivy HBA to be a competitive applicant?
Okay, I can start, and then I guess Caitlin and Annie can add. So I think the first thing I would say is just don't think that you have to be like the co-founder, the president, or a leader in anything in order to be successful to applying to HBA. Ivy looks for a really wide range of people. It doesn't really matter, you know, what position you actually hold, and it doesn't really matter what activity you have. So I'm from BC, and we don't have something called DECA that's very prevalent in Ontario. So compared to the Ontario applicants, I definitely didn't have that on my resume or on my application. But what I would say is make sure that you are highlighting experiences that you are genuinely passionate about, and that you're highlighting specific instances of things that will really make you stand out and show your character. I know Ivy does care a lot about leadership, and just because you're not the leader or the co-founder or the president of a club, you can talk about how maybe as in a group setting, right? When your teammates were maybe thinking of an idea and they really couldn't come up with one, or when they were too scared to reach out to someone, you took that step forward and you were the one that kind of brought the team together to make something happen. That shows your leadership, even if you don't have the title. And I think that's something that you should highlight in your application to make sure that you still show those characters and those traits. Yeah.
Thanks, Maggie. Caitlin or Annie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'll say one more thing. I think there is, like Maggie said, there's no cookie cutter applicant, and they're not looking for that either. I would actually argue that companies are trying to go against that in promoting diversity of thought and getting people from various backgrounds to work in like one kind of team. Generally, I don't want to say do what you're passionate, even though you should, because like that just sounds really cliche. I will say though, doing something that you are interested in, you can see yourself making an impact in, that you are motivated intrinsically to do, that will make your life a lot more fun in university and in whatever extracurricular you're doing. So don't forget to enjoy the process. But I wouldn't say there's any cookie cutter set of extracurriculars that'll get you in.
Thanks, Annie. I see we've got a hand up. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry, I believe there's 2 hands up.
Yeah, you can go ahead and ask your question. Yeah, I believe Katie had her hand up last time.
Oh, awesome. I was wondering, so you talked about networking, how it was an art, which I found really interesting. So say you get that connection, and I wanted to know, how would you go about getting this connection to actually securing the job? Any tips on how you could, after having secured this connection, get that internship?
Yeah, I actually wouldn't think of it as I'm getting this connection for the sole purpose of getting the job, if you know what I mean. When I definitely understand your question is like, how do I leverage that connection in order to make something more of it and, bring value to both parties? I think that's a really good question. Let me think. I think one of the big things is continuing with that connection and building on it, so it's not just like a one-time interaction and then people forget who you are, because a 30-minute conversation in a year is an irrelevant amount of time. So making sure to follow up, making sure to continue building on that connection, doing your own research and reaching out to find out opportunities, and like doing your research about opportunities is another big one. So if they work at the company that you're really interested in, you've done a lot of research on a role that you saw an opening, or you want to know if there is an opening in that related role, you could ask them to connect you to someone in that relevant team, or to find out more information about it. That's something that you could do after you've built the connection. I would say those two are some of the tips I would say, but I would also recommend asking that question to people in their professional career, like after university, because chances are they would have had more experience with like leveraging that into a full-time role, or if they've done a career switch, leveraging that into an industry switch, and they might give you more helpful answers as well.
I can add on to that as well. I think Annie gave some really great tips. I think I'm also going to try to answer Alex's question of what is the most important networking skill an intern can possess. I think that kind of goes into what you were asking. So I think for me personally, I treat networking as not like I want something from them. Actually, it's more about, okay, like what can I offer to this person that I'm networking with? So for example, like if I know like that Jeff is like, for example, the senior manager at TD and he works in marketing, and he tells me that he cares a lot about trends and innovation, then what am I going to do in my day-to-day life to try to send him things that I think might be useful for him? So for example, if I come across an article talking about like the new like vegan burger or something like that, or if the new restaurant is opening up about something super cool, and I think that that's something that he would be interested in, then I would share that with him, because I know that that's something that he might be interested in reading more about. And for him, he'll know that if any time that he comes across something that he thinks I would find interesting, he'll send that back to me. And I think like for me and Jeff, that's how we've kept our connection for the past year. And we actually started and we actually met through a network, like through kind of like an event as well. So just, I think the most important thing in networking, whether it's within a firm or whatever it is, just think about what the other person would want. What would they care about? And try to understand that person and try to tailor your conversations and the things that you look out for to that person. And I think that will help you kind of be remembered. And whenever opportunities do come up, they'll think of you first. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, we can move on to the next question.
Sure, thank you.
Awesome, thanks guys. So I think we've got two questions that kind of connect to each other. One, why did you choose to intern at Deloitte or Scotiabank or RBC? And how would you diversify yourself as an applicant when you're applying to these investment banking internships?
Okay, I guess I can start. I decided to intern at Scotia just because I knew like I really wanted to work at a big bank in my second year. And also I know that with like finance internships and stuff, there's very few opportunities to work in like a front office role where you're going to be interacting with clients. And so with Scotia, I also attended a few of their events and realized like they have this one position, which is sales and trading, that is front office, and that is achievable for second years. So that's why I went with Scotia. And I also attended like a number of their networking events, met some of the campus recruiters, and they're all just really great to talk to, really, really friendly, and they seem to genuinely want to help students succeed and kind of advance in their career. And one really interesting point in terms of like recruiting at Scotia is that they actually don't look at your resumes. So it's really up to you it's more about like showcasing your personality. And also there's this like plum profile, which is where you do like a number of personality tests, and like I guess a bit of like IQ tests and things like that to kind of determine like what kind of person you are. But they're really looking at that and your grades as the initial screening. So I think that was really interesting that they kind of like remove that traditional aspect of just looking at your resume, but more so trying to learn about you as a person. And you can also even like showcase yourself and like what you've been involved with through these like networking and through all these chats with them. So I think that was pretty important and something that really differentiated from other places. So yeah.
Thanks, Caitlin. Maggie and Annie, would you guys like to add anything?
Yeah, for me, my path was kind of different to RBC. I signed with RBC because it was one of the first offers that I got, and I was kind of in a panic about like, is COVID going to take over? And again, are there going to be other jobs on the market? So I signed, and I was just really happy that I was employed for the summer, which does happen. So if you are like just wanting a job, know that that is completely normal. But for me, how I kind of got to that point was I actually applied to a diversity program at RBC for the Women's Advisory Program. It's for women who are interested in capital markets. I think I was briefly interested in finance for like a few months before I realized it was probably too hard for me and I couldn't do it. And so through that, I got to network with a lot of people at the firm. I became like, I had a decent relationship with a recruiter and a few people at the firm, and they screened these applicants for women's advisory program, so they knew that they were good candidates for RBC, regardless of whether they're in capital markets or not. That's how I went through the interview process and eventually landed my offer there.
Cool. Yeah, I can quickly speak to why I chose Deloitte. So at Deloitte, consulting works a little bit differently. This also goes for the other big four companies. So in consulting, there's actually specific service lines, which means that you actually work in a specific kind of like industry or like a specific service. So I'm in supply chain this summer. There's also like, for example, human capital consulting. There's also operations transformation. There's like public sector transformation. So there's a lot of different types. And I think that was really interesting to me. And that's one of the reasons why I chose Deloitte, is because I could have a more specialized service line that I could start with and realize that, oh, maybe this is something for me, or this is something that's not for me, and then try to transfer into a different industry if I know specifically that that's something that's not for me. And I think the other thing about Deloitte is that just the culture, like people always talk about like people and culture, and honestly, like I really do feel that at Deloitte. You know, I was actually able to have a genuine conversation with my manager about my burnout, for example. Even as an intern, I didn't feel that I was pressured to stay, you know, super long after work and continue working until I was literally going to like melt in my chair. I was able to have that conversation with my coach, and they actually took it to the next step and said, hey, look, like I'm going to talk to your supervisor and see what we can do about that. Whether that's adding another person to your team or whether that means like giving you less work, we're going to make sure that you don't burn out, right? Because that's not what we want. And I think that was when I realized like Deloitte is really a firm that does care about its people. And I think that's really important to consider as well, like as you're networking too, is don't just worry about whether you're going to fit with that firm and whether they want you. Also think about whether like this firm is like fit for you too, right? Do you like how the way things are organized at this firm? Do you like their perks? Like, do you like the way that they treat people? Like, make the networking like an opportunity for you to learn more about the firm as well, instead of just like trying to get yourself a job, because a lot of people will see your value, and honestly, a lot of people, more than you think, will actually want you to be at their company. So actually interview the company from your perspective as well.
All right, so because we are at 3:20 now, we are running a little bit late on time. So for any of the questions that weren't answered, I do sincerely apologize. Hopefully you'll be able to connect with all of our panelists today. Their LinkedIns are featured on the screen, and panelists, you guys are more than welcome to leave them in the chat. And yeah, any other questions that you may have, you can direct them to our panelists.